you so much, Simon, for joining me this evening. I appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me here. I'm all the way out in Canada, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Absolutely. It must be cold.
It's pretty cold. Yeah, it's a nice cold day here in Ottawa.
Yeah, for sure. I bet it is. I mean, it's like the East Coast is getting that bomb cyclone right now. So
It has
I don't
been,
know.
yeah, it's been nuts. We experienced last night. It got down to minus 33 Celsius. I got the high of minus 26 Celsius. It's extraordinarily cold this time of year. It lasts for a couple of weeks usually.
Wow. Sorry, East Coast, you're not that cold.
Yeah, they like to say they're cold, but they're not getting it. They're not.
Yeah, they're not Canadian at all.
Exactly.
Hey, so to kick us off, first off, I appreciate you taking the time to be with me on the show. Looking forward to all the things you've got to say. To kick us off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your mission is?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to say thank you for having me on the show. It's an honor to be here. I love being on shows. I love being on other podcasts because podcasters just understand podcasters. We understand why we're doing it and the reason and the value that we hope we're bringing to others. So thank you very much for allowing me to have an opportunity to talk with yourself and your listeners. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
So where do we begin? I mean, I'm 51 years old. I have a 23-year-old daughter. I live in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada right now, and she lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is on the west coast for us, way on the other side of the country. Mm-hmm. So I never get to see her. That's a bummer, but she's a great kid. She does all the things she wants to do, and she's figuring it out, and she's working hard, and she's got her plans, and I'm very, very proud of her. She's a good daughter of mine.
Mm-hmm. Good job.
She's a good kid. But let's see. So what else? So I'm in the military. I started way back in 1994 in the infantry, in what's called the Royal Canadian Regiment. It's Canada's oldest, longest consecutively serving infantry regiment, and in my opinion, the best regiment. I did that for 5 years.
Always is.
Always is, right? Yeah, there's always that rivalry. It never goes away. So I did that for 5 years, and I loved it. I was 19 years old when I joined, and I got to throw hand grenades, shoot machine guns, got some cool tours in there, got all kinds of fun things to do. Like every young kid who thought he knew everything about everything, the infantry was the place to go. But eventually you start growing up. You have no choice. So in the military for that there's a program where we can switch trades. So I did that. I selected for it, and I joined the Canadian Air Force, the Royal Canadian Air Force. And inside that trade, in the Air Force, I became what's called an aircraft structures technician, which I love to say it's very loosely like auto body for airplanes, painting, welding, machining, a lot of metal fabrication. And in today's airframes, a lot of carbon fiber and Kevlar, aircraft upholstery. You get the idea, that type of stuff. I love doing that. It was a lot of fun. I did that from 1999. Well, depends who you ask, right up until the time I retired. But in our military, what happens is, in the Air Force anyways, for the air maintenance trades, what happens is when you get to the rank of warrant officer, so now you're considered a senior and non-commissioned member, and we all become what's called an aircraft maintenance superintendent. And that's because at that rank level, you stop working on the floor. In fact, people don't want you on the floor, even if you're coming down just to help and say hi. They don't want you around. It's awkward because you're now that old grizzled warrant officer no one wants around. So we all become what's called AM sub. So I did that, and you have no choice. And then, so I did that for another few years. And I did that, I was doing very well in the military. And then I realized it might be time to do something else. And that was because I started a master's degree, a Master of Arts in Leadership at Royal Roads University. And that program fundamentally changed my perception on so many things. I don't even know where to begin. It started with understanding that my entire identity did not need to be attached to the military. It taught me the difference between training and education. It taught me the value of opening your eyes to what's around you. And it taught me all about how I need to be authentic to myself. Because if I'm going to be a leader, if I'm not being true to myself, how can I be true to the people that I'm fortunate enough to lead? So that all of those things came into the thing. And I retired. I completely left the military, and I worked for a company here in Ottawa. It was great for a couple of years. But like all things, when the pendulum swings all the way to the right and it goes all the way to the left, eventually it's going to sit in the middle. And that's what happened. An opportunity came my way, and I was able to work for the company, the civilian company I was in, and rejoin the military as a reservist. So I came back in. I joined what was called 412 Squadron. It's like our version of the Air Force One Squadron. We have 4 Challenger jets. We did our thing. And I was the squadron warrant officer, which meant it was my first position as a command team partner. So that was really cool. The commanding officers and I were fantastic. I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, but I learned from them. And that's okay. Leading is making mistakes and figuring it out.
Yep.
And then, yeah. Right. And then after that, after a little while, about a year or two, I was very fortunate, and I was able to be eligible to be promoted to the rank of Chief Warrant Officer, which in our military system is the highest rank you can get as a non-commissioned member. There are other levels higher like that. We have wing chief, warrant officers, command chiefs, and that type of thing. But it's the last time you get promoted. Everything else after that is an appointment. So now I work full-time in the reserves, which is our version of part-time, but I work full-time. That's a whole other episode. And so I do that, and I work for the Royal Canadian Air Force headquarters as their Air Staff Headquarters Chief Warrant Officer, which is just a fancy way of saying I sit in my cubicle, I use a standing desk, and I lead people. I try to. We'll see how it goes. And that's it. And that's my story.
Wow. It's amazing. I mean, I think a lot of us can relate to that, especially if you're coming from the military. And one of the things that you mentioned was this in the course of your academic studies, you talked about the ability to recognize something very important, that what you were learning helped you transition that military mindset over into a corporate mindset that maybe, hey, we don't all have to be in a specific way, from a military perspective like I am. I thought that in the beginning, like, how am I going to lead people in the corporate environment, until I got there and I started doing some education. And one of the things that I learned about was empathy and empathetic leadership, at least from a United States Army perspective. So I guess one of the first questions that I have for you is, where does empathy fit inside of a highly structured military system? Have you been able to integrate what you've pulled from your leadership studies into the military mindset of saying, hey, you don't have to do that?
That's a great question. Empathy is a tough one in a military environment, because sometimes we have to be empathetic. We need to have those moments, and sometimes we just don't have the time. If you're in the middle of some type of engagement, not really the time to have a big conversation. Sometimes you just have to turn left and go without question. Sometimes the people need that response. It's our responsibility as the leaders to know when to choose which one of those options. And to answer your question, yeah, I have experienced that quite a bit. I remember when I came back. So I'll backpedal just a teeny tiny bit. The way the master's program was designed that I went through, it's a 2-year program. And in each year you have 8 weeks. It's a blended program. So you do 8 weeks at home online, you do a 2-week residency, and another 8 weeks online. And then the second year is the same thing. So when I go to do my program, the first 8 weeks were fine. No big deal. And it's important to note that in my program, I was the only military member in the entire cohort. And I had convinced myself I had no right to be there, because the majority of the students on this program all had the letter C at the beginning of their professional designations, and I did not. And the other thing to note is I don't have an undergraduate degree. The way you get designed into this program is they look at your professional and personal skill sets, and they say, hey, yeah, you have what it takes. Come on in. And then, but I didn't believe that. I just thought they wanted my money. So I already don't deserve to be there, and I'm freaking out. So we start getting ready to go to the residency, and I'm standing there, and I'm like, I have no right to be here. I hadn't heard imposter syndrome yet, but I gave it to myself so well that I actually stressed myself out so bad. I beat my immune system up so perfectly that I gave myself the common cold. So I show up, now I'm sick, I'm all snuffly, and I still don't believe I deserve to be there, and I'm freaking out. So what I ended up doing was I took a moment, and there was these little nuggets, though. I could tell something was different about this education I was getting, not this military training, because they were talking about, okay, what do you need in this? Or when I was writing my essays, they'd say, Simon, this is great, it's clear, but there's no heart in your paper. This isn't about hearts. This is about leading, right? So but I remember thinking, well, maybe there's something in that, and that's what started changing it. And then at the residency, I very cautiously put my hand up a couple of times. And sure enough, when I put my hand up and I said what I was going to say, instead of being told, hey, why are you even talking? You shouldn't even be here. Go sit in the back. It was, we had never even considered that. I'm so thankful that we had that military perspective. Thank you. I'm like, okay, maybe there's something here. So I opened my mind up to that. And then I really went all in. And that's my long-winded way to answer your question, in that when I came back home and I'm still in the military and I'm talking about, hey, let's sit down and let's discuss this. Let's do icebreakers. Let's do these things that matter to build that time, because I didn't see the value in taking the time to be in the moment. It was just get it done, finish the task, move on. But now I got it. I was like, okay, this matters. This helps us get to the next thing. It helped build the community stronger than what we were just having to do. And some people were not involved in that. They had no desire. They just wanted to do their thing. And other peoples were curious. And a small select group were right into it. And it was great. So it was a big challenge. And yeah, and then when I went to the civilian industry and I came over and I was doing the same things, and some of the things I was doing were changing how I was talking. Instead of saying, "Hey, we're going to do it this way," it was like, or "I don't agree with you." It was like, "Okay, well, thank you very much for your consideration in that, but how might we find a solution that works for everyone? Let's find
Right.
something. Let's discover this together." And I was going, "What are you talking about? You no, we'll figure it out. We'll get there." And it was just a slow change. And then the more I pushed it, the more people got used to me talking like that. And it seemed to work well. The job I'm in now as the Chief Warrant Officer, it's perfect for what I need to do, because when people come up, they'll talk to me, they'll be airing grievance, they'll be asking me questions. And instead of thinking, "Oh, I'm this old grizzled Chief Warrant Officer who's just going to yell and bark at them," I hope that I'm creating an environment where they can come and speak to me about things that are important and not be afraid about what the chief's going to do. Just say, "Hey, the
Mm-hmm.
chief is going to look into this," and be open-minded to whatever it might be. I don't have to agree, but I need to be open-minded to it.
Yeah.
Does that make
It's
sense?
interesting.
I hope I didn't ramble too badly
No,
there.
no, absolutely. It makes sense. I mean, there were so many things that I was thinking about as you went on about your experience. And one of the things, it's just right on the front is the generational gap. And I have a question specifically on this in a few minutes. So I don't want to go into too much detail, because if I do that, then everybody will leave. um, is the generational gap. I mean, it's when I was growing up, my dad was a Vietnam veteran, fought in the Korean War, went into Vietnam, and the way that he led the boomers, they had a specific mindset about how they get things done. Right? They had a particular work ethic, and I, as a Gen X, didn't particularly deal with that very well. I was quite independent. I wanted to do things my way, and as I got older and started leading younger people, I adapted this leadership style, much of like what you just described. How do you want to do it? What is your idea? What options do you think we have to push X software package forward, or whatever, whatever the case may be? And it's just one of those things. But what I did find was that younger generations don't really understand authority very well the way that we do, because we grew up in it. And so for us, it was like, okay, I'm going to this neighborhood swimming pool and it's called authority. And I know how to deal with that. And I also know how to replicate that, because
Yeah.
my dad did it. I did it. I saw my sergeants do it. I saw my command sergeant majors do it. I know all those things. And the generation of today just typically doesn't have that as much as we did. And so this concept of authority seems to change, which is a kind of a great segue into a question for you that just popped in my head, which is, how do you think emerging leaders misunderstand, like the new leaders that we have today, how do they misunderstand authority so early on? I mean, your
Well,
thoughts on Gen Z leadership?
well, yeah. So we only get 40 minutes. No.
As long as you want.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah. So it's a really great question, in that it's generally, I agree with you. Like there is this, almost people forget, like, because the society has been such that the leadership chain of command is not so much straight up and down, as more as it's flat. And that flatness sometimes seems to forget that person on the right is the CEO, or that's the commanding officer. In my day, I can tell you, in 29 years in the military, up until I got into this current job that I'm in, actually, I would even say my previous role, maybe 5 times I went into the commanding officers or the chief warrant officer's office. And if I did 4 of those times, because I was in a lot of trouble. You just don't do that. You just, because you are afraid of the chief and you are afraid of the commanding officer. And that fear was partly because the prestige that comes with being in those positions. But you were in the mid 90s like I was. You were also just afraid to go into the RSM's office. And that wasn't necessarily good, but sometimes depended what was happening. But now there's people, the challenge I find is people realize being the chief doesn't really matter that much. Or not that it doesn't matter, but that recognition of that is different. So I'll get up and I'll have just kids, "Well, hey chief, what's going on today?" And I don't have a problem with that, except if I'm standing around a bunch of generals, we still have protocols we need to follow, but they forget that that's the thing. And it's because we're trying to create an environment where people feel like they can come and talk to me openly about the real concerns that they have. But how do I strike a balance between come talk to me, but remember that we still have a chain of command and I still have a job to do. So it's tough.
What do you
What
do
I
to
do,
balance it? Yeah, well, great. You're about to go right into that.
perfect. So what I will try and do is if I see something that like that example, I will finish my conversation with whatever, and I'll go find that person. Hey, listen, let's sit down. Let's have a conversation about this. And it's not the old 5-finger push at the person in their chest. It's listen, as a reminder, we're still in the military. Like, let's figure this out. Let's go. Why? And then I when I first started doing that, I'd finish my speech and I'd get, are we good? Thumbs up and walk away. Realize, and then at some point in time down the road, what I realized was I was looking back at it, the same thing would happen with the same people time and again. And I'd go and I think, what are we doing? Why? And then, so what I did now is I've shifted that a little bit. I still deliver somewhat of the speech because that's what the chief does. The chief tells you what not to do and you get a speech. It's like getting a speech from your mom or your dad. But when it's over, what I'll ask is, now, what do you think? And I'm often surprised with the answers that come back because I'm expecting something because we're already building our biases. We're already building our perceptions of what we think the answer should be. And when I get a response back like, well, I don't see what the problem is. We know each other. Okay, great. And then I'll explain that. So I get a little more information. And what I've learned to do is ask more questions, stay curious and keep going until I think they get the point. And then I'll ask them, do you think you get the point? I think I do. Okay, what's the point? We go back, we hit it again. And so my response or my suggestion to people would be stay curious, keep asking questions. If you think you got it, maybe ask the question to verify it.
And when it comes down to the point of assertiveness, how do you hold the line with regards to keeping the trust and the motivation amongst, I would say, the younger generation, or just anybody for that matter, while you're trying to be assertive? Because one of the things that I found was that, as you described, when we were growing up, if we got assertiveness applied to us, we were just kind of doing the north and south kind of thing. And we said, yes, drill sergeant, or yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, we're going to move out and we're going to do whatever we have to do. That mentality has changed. And it's not, whether it's in corporate or whether it's in military, it doesn't work that way anymore. And so there's a balance now that we as leaders have to maintain that says, how do we apply assertiveness while also maintaining that trust and motivation in our team?
I struggled with that for quite a while, and because I didn't know how I was going to hit that balance. But what I've landed on for myself, and maybe I'm hopefully this will resonate with others, is I learned that I can't just have a blanket policy in my mind about when I'm going to be assertive and when I'm not. I have to pay attention to what's going on in the environment around me and that person. If that person has done something that I think might need to be assertive, you'll hear me say this a lot, I'm sorry, but ask some questions. Be curious about that because we don't know really why that person did that thing that they did. And the example I love to use often is when you're driving down the road and you get cut off, was that person being a jerk? Most people, their instant reactions, yep, that person was doing that because they're just ignorant. Maybe they just lost someone. Maybe they just got fired from work. Maybe they're excited because they're going to have a baby and their mind is not 100% on that task. We don't know. If we pulled over and asked them, sure. And, now don't be wrong. I'm not saying I don't have that instant and I try to keep my fingers in my hands, but it doesn't always work. So
Me too.
Work, yeah, you hear me, right? So at work, when I'm trying to understand something, when do I be assertive and when do I not? I'll ask the question, what's going on? What's happening here? And if the answer was like, I just didn't, okay, well, now we have a different conversation and I'll step it up a bit and I'll go from there. Sometimes it's very obvious. Sometimes we don't have the luxury to wait and I'll go right into it. You will not do that again. And if we have a problem, if I have to have a conversation with you again, you'll be standing at attention and you'll be in the office and you know what's happening. Yes, chief. And then we go from there. And then we go but it really depends on the situation. And so what I've learned to do is ask the questions and pay attention to what's happening around me and get to know those folks, because I've also had situations where I started in with the assertiveness and then come to find out that I was wrong. And that sucks too. But the other advice I put out there is when you're wrong, it's okay to admit you're wrong.
Please do.
Exactly. Just do it, and because people will respect that. And most people respect that. I don't want to generalize. And you'll figure it out. And that happens.
Yeah.
You're never going to get this perfect.
I totally agree with you. Simon, if there was a case, I think last year, where I did something that I knew wasn't quite right, I know that we were born with 2 ears in one of these, so we should listen as twice as much as we speak. But for whatever
Love it.
reason, this individual was saying something to me, and I spoke much faster than my brain could like operate. So when I got done, long story short, to go on what you said, I was like, yeah, I'm really sorry I said that. I'm really sorry I did that. And I felt really bad. And I assumed the worst was going to happen because of what I said. But it turns out that an individual respected the fact that I was able to say I did something, I mean, quickly. I think the diminishing return is if it's 2 days later,
Yeah,
you know, but
exactly.
it is what it is. I mean, I think you're absolutely right on that. What can a leader do to remain steadfast and project that confidence when executing these things that really would make the average person quite nervous?
That's a good one. My first thought would be prepared and go into it knowing that you're as prepared as you can be. I had a situation very similar to that, and the challenge, the person made a very large mistake, and it was a willful mistake. So for me, there's a difference between negligence and having an error. This was clearly a negligence type of thing. So it changes how the conversation goes. It changes the type of discipline we're about to administer, that type of a thing. But the problem was, this was generally a good person. They weren't making mistakes. They just didn't quite get it. And this was a terrible, willful decision. So we had to do it. We had to act. But I didn't like it because I believe that this person could learn from this mistake. But so what do we do? So inside, I was like, okay, if I just go a little bit softer, he'll understand. Okay, we gave him a chance. We'll do this. We'll do that. But I know what I have to do. Like it's very, very well written. It was very clear. The policy was very clear. What do I do? So I sat back and I did two things. The first one, and it was the first time I had done this as a senior leader in this role, I actually called a friend of mine, someone that I trusted and their opinion. And I sat and said, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Is this accurate? These are my options I'm looking at. Which one can I do? What would you, and I asked him what I said was, what would you do? And he came back, he was like, this isn't about what I would do. I'm like, okay, thank you very much. What do you think? So, there we go. Better. So we talked about it, and we ended up talking for a couple of hours, and we went back and forth over the pros and the cons, and we weighed it all out. And at the end of it, I knew what I had to do. It was obvious. What was also obvious was I didn't like it, but that doesn't matter. I'm the leader. The leaders sometimes have to do things we're just not going to want to do, but we are in charge. So we had to do it. And I did it. And I did it as professionally as I could. And then when I thought we were done that call, we hung up, did our thing. I said, okay, well, how am I going to tell this kid this? Because I've never had to give that type of bad news, or not bad news, but I've never had that type of a speech. So I called my friend again, and we rehearsed it. He was the kid, and we rehearsed him taking it really well. We rehearsed him taking it moderately, and even him losing his mind and having a whole full-blown meltdown. And we rehearsed what and how I would say in those moments and how I would react. Stay calm, breathe, drink some water, do the things. At one point, I even said, okay, listen, we're going to pause right now. We're going to come back, and when you settle down, we'll do our thing. We'll come back and we'll reattack this. And all of those things happened. It worked very, very well. And when I went into the actual conversation, I felt confident knowing that this was good, even though I wasn't happy about what I was about to. Well, I wouldn't say I wasn't happy. The member deserved what was about to happen to them, but I wasn't enjoying what I was going to be doing. So I went in, but I knew I was prepared. I knew I looked at as many angles as I could do, and I went from there.
Yeah.
And that would probably be the best advice I could give if you have that time. If you don't have that time, because sometimes we don't have the luxury of rehearsals and those different things. The advice I would like to offer is trust yourself. There is a reason why you were placed into that leadership role. It's hard for us. Often it's hard for us to see it when we're put in those spots, but you earned the right to be there. You did.
Yeah.
You can do it. You've proven yourself. You have this. Might not be as perfectly polished or sculpted as you want, but you'll get it done and you'll do great. Just got to have faith.
It's amazing to me that if I were to split those up into option one that you gave, which was to practice and prepare and to rehearse, getting 80% of the spotlight, and the other option getting 20%, that even though that percentage of time that you just took, it's equally difficult for someone to trust themselves to say, I can do this. I mean, we in the military have always practiced that at least, I don't know what the Canadian version of this is, but I'm sure you have one. In the US Army, they say you train to fight or train as you fight.
Yep.
And so the idea is that we train in the same exact manner in which we operate in that particular moment.
Mhm.
And so when you as a leader need to prepare for yourself, you need to do exactly as you described. You have to go in through and practice how you're going to react to specific situations. And it's difficult because I've tried that before and it didn't quite work. And so what I actually did was I was better off with the 20% recommendation that you had. I trusted myself. In some cases, like you're right, those shades come off and you've got to do that. But in most cases, you can generally operate well in both of those realms. But I think people need to take this away. 80%, 20% doesn't necessarily mean it's easier. And so,
yeah, you're absolutely right. It really depends on the situation. It depends on the person. There are so many things that come into play. And one of the things I learned, I don't want to say early on in my leadership journey, but I would say midlife of it, was that the way I'm dealing with a situation, the way I'm choosing to use what leadership styles I have in that moment can change the next second I'm talking to that person. They weight shift. What we're doing, it's all about being flexible in that moment and paying attention to the environment around us. A little while back, I really needed to understand what my guiding principles were, my leadership guiding principles. Because I knew I wanted to be a good leader. Great, most leaders do.
Yeah.
But how was I going to do that? What did that mean to me? And I needed to put words to it. And I had a catchphrase I put at the end of my podcast for quite a while, but I realized it wasn't what I was doing. And then so I've done this now. So when I'm into these types of situations like we were just talking about, I can look at this and say, okay, this is what am I doing these three things? And if I'm not, why not? And then go from there. And it's stay curious, be kind, and lead authentically. And that's outwardly and inwardly. Am I being curious with myself? Am I being kind to myself? Do I need to be beating myself right now? Probably not, but maybe I do. Maybe I need it. Who knows? So it's a challenge, but it's all about trusting yourself. It sounds like you trusted yourself and you got through it. How'd it go?
Yeah, for the most part, it went okay. I mean, I honestly, it didn't pan out exactly the way I wanted it, but what was real was that I knew that I tried. And when the situation didn't quite end up the way that I wanted it to be, you know what? I mean, what do? You can just say, I tried my best. And I gave the opportunity for the individual to tell me what was wrong, to do X, Y, and Z, to engage me the way that I was giving them the opportunity to do so. And so there were some things that they just did that weren't quite, they had no integrity. And so now in this situation where they saw me, they were like, I don't want to see him. I don't want to come face to face with a person who's going to shine the spotlight on my misdeeds. But, and I learned a lot. And luckily, I had some really good leaders around me as I was younger. But I always wondered this question: what lessons from failure do the best leaders take with them? And I just tried to figure out that answer. And I guess that would be a great thing to spin around and throw in your direction. What are some lessons from failure that people can take with them as they're leading?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. And honestly, I believe it's one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves when we're trying to learn from what we've done wrong and what were the failures. The first thought I have is admit you failed at something. And you don't say, and I'm not again, like, I understand that the word fail has a tough negative connotation to it, but there's also something to be said about just acknowledging you failed. I failed at this. But it's what we do with it next. So what do we do next? Ask some questions, figure it out. Stay curious to what happened. Did you do something wrong? Can you put your hand on your heart and say, yes, that failed, but I did my best. What else can you do? Learn from it. You move forward. I remember when I was a brand new master corporal, and in the Canadian military, the master corporal rank is your first formal leadership rank. You generally have you're in charge of a group of 3 to 5 people, and you do your thing. So I'm in charge of these 2 guys, and they were old. They were older than me. They're not dead. They are older than me, and they were far more senior in the trade than I was, and in the Air Force. They had always been in the Air Force, and I came in later. So I was intimidated by them completely
Mhm.
honest, because these guys knew, and they had been on this aircraft. I was working on the F-18s at the time. They had been on these planes for decades. So collectively, I had something like 35 years of experience, and I have a week. And I'm
Mhm.
supposed to tell them how to run this maintenance program. Like, that didn't make any sense. So I'm nervous, and I'm trying to think. So
To say the least.
you get it, right? And so what I did, the leadership style that I chose was to be their buddy, which is not a leadership style. And it
Right.
took me a while to even realize that. I just said, right on, things are great. They were all happy. Yeah, they were happy. Hey, Simon, I'm going to leave. Okay, good. Have a good time. Even though I knew work needed to get done, but I was too afraid to say anything because I was intimidated. I wouldn't even admit that to myself. And it took a while. And finally, at some point in time, I got a little more comfortable. And I said, like, guys, we gotta figure this out. This is not the way this is supposed to be going. And it wasn't about me being in charge. It was about me acknowledging the fact that we all need to understand. So we actually all became really good friends, and we figured out what that was, and we went forward. Um, but you don't make one mistake and never make a mistake again. Like a week later, we're getting ready to go on this big giant exercise, and we're sending the planes. And in the Air Force, we have what's called a PUK, a PUK, a pack up kit, and it's not like one suitcase. Imagine it's kind of like a small. It's an inventory for a plane when we send it away. It's all the parts and things we might need to manage that aircraft on a deployment.
Mhm.
And so we're getting ready to go, and we're getting ready to do this deployment. And one of the techs that was working for me, he had been selected to go on this trip. So it's great. So I get an email from the supply chain saying, "Hey, listen, make sure you get this puck set up. Send your guy over to make sure everything's in there." So I think I'm a very funny guy. I hit what I thought was forward, but I actually hit reply saying, "Hey, I'm sure you already know this, but make sure you don't F this up," and a bunch of exclamation points and all kinds of different stuff. Well, I didn't send it to the tech. I sent it back to the corporal that had sent this email to us, and he didn't know me. So now I'm sending F bombs to people that they don't know me in the military email system. And I didn't know I did it wrong. Because I had no clue. I hit send and I went to work. So
Mhm.
away I go, and I come back to the office. The sergeant has me now standing at the desk because he's yelling at me. And I have no idea what I've done wrong. And then I find out. And then as I'm running over, going to profusely apologize to this supply tech, we come around the corner into the office, and it turns out that his sergeant's birthday was his 50th birthday was that day, and they had painted the office a bright shade of pink or something. And I'm like, wow, this is a really bright shade of pink, and some other stupid comments. And he was sitting at his desk. I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. So, and it wasn't. It did not go well for me. But I recovered from it, because even though I had a whole bunch of egg on my face and I felt very, very embarrassed, what did I do with it? I sucked in that embarrassment, and I learned from it. This is my first time I remember thinking to myself, okay, I made these mistakes, but what am I going to do with these things? How am I going to learn from these things? And I've never hit reply when I meant to hit forward. I don't send upset emails anymore. Like
Yeah.
I make conscious efforts to think about these things. And I think about those errors when I'm doing something. Okay, am I doing the thing that I want to be doing? And then I go from there. Again, I really truly believe the best leaders are the most curious leaders, inwardly and outwardly.
Mhm. Yeah, I would not disagree with that at all. It's one of those things that like as you described, you went through this experience, you had this mistake, you learned from those things, and you put those into your toolbox. And hopefully that toolbox is still nice and fresh, and you open it up on a daily basis and say, for this particular situation, this is what I'm going to use.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, my toolbox, I use it so often. I don't think I ever close the lid. I'm in there all the time. Even recently, I found I was talking to someone about a thing, and I don't, for whatever reason, I don't really like the person. Nothing wrong to me. They work pretty hard, but I just, something in the back of my head has said, you don't like that person, and I
Mm.
struggle to not, to do the things I have to do because I just don't like this person. And so, okay. So I sitting back and I'm thinking about it one day. What is going on here? So I went back and looked in that toolbox, and I looked around. I pulled out the one that said, okay, what were you feeling when you've had this type of thing before? And then it dawned on me, this person had a similar-esque type face of a situation I had many, many years ago. And I hadn't quite tied those dots together. And now that I know that, things are much easier because it's not their fault that I am having this reaction. But the learning I got out of that was that it's not their fault that I'm having this reaction. So I needed to
Mhm.
acknowledge that. And often when I'm talking about various types of leadership things and how we're doing in the moment, I often ask the question, well, what were you feeling in that moment? And people say, well, I was feeling angry or whatever. I said, no. What were you feeling? Were you feeling like full of energy? Were you feeling hungry? Was your mind racing? Were your eyes darting all over the place? Because often what happens is once we've kind of crested that hill of just no going back, that's the moment when we really need to pay attention to how we are physiologically feeling and hold on to that, because that's a marker, and it happens to us every single time we get pushed. And then know that. And then it took me a long time to teach myself, like, oh, okay, it's this thing. In my case, I feel like my body is vibrating. I like to use the term I'm covered in ants. The ants are just walking all over me. And when I'm feeling that moment, it's like that's my cue to step back and say, okay, you're pushing this here. Step back and have a look and ask some questions. And then I go and do it, and I'm able to reset. So it's tough. It's not easy to do.
That's actually, I appreciate you sharing that, because the next question I have, and I'll call this one the wrap up question, is that when you start going down a pathway, for whatever reason, and you realize it's not for you, it's not working, things are not working out, and you need to refocus and move in a new direction to figure that out. Is there a certain set of questions that you ask yourself? Is there a certain thing that you do?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question. And I'll tell you, I do that. That is one of the things I will ask the question. I frame it maybe just a little bit differently. And like, usually I'll say something along the lines, hey, listen, this is how I'm interpreting this information. This is how I'm reading your body language. And is it accurate? And that provides an opportunity for the member to go and say, oh, no, not really. And then we kind of hopefully we'll have a conversation from that. And the reason I do that is because many years ago, when I'm even right now, I'm looking at myself there. When I'm concentrating, or when I'm really invested in the moment, what happens is I get what's called Garfield eyes. So for the younger generation, it's a very famous cartoon from when Eric and I were kids. And Garfield was very famous for this. And Garfield was famous for having this scowl when he wasn't getting lasagna or not getting his way, because he was a pretty well pampered cat. And unbeknownst to me, when I'm concentrating or when I'm thinking and I'm really invested in the moment, I'm getting this. I'm even doing it right now. Like it looks like this, and it looks like I'm really upset. And it's just the way it always been. I didn't know that. In my mind, I'm like, oh, well, everyone knows I'm concentrating. I'm here. I'm listening. So they know I'm not upset. So flash forward, I'm a sergeant. I'm teaching basic training, and I'm talking to these students, and I'm in the class I'm teaching. And the student, we were teaching map and compass. The student could not figure it out for whatever reason. So I'm like, okay, we got to do this. We got to do that. And I'm not upset. I'm happy. I enjoy doing it. I like teaching map and compass. And the student's like, Sarge, the reason I'm not getting this is because you're freaking me out because you're so upset. What? I'm not upset. And now I'm upset because they're telling me I'm upset, right?
Yeah.
Now
you're just in this big circle.
Yeah, exactly. So I go home, and I'm having supper with my daughter and my family at the time, and we're doing our thing, and I'm explaining this story, and I'm expecting them to say, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's crazy. And they're like, my daughter, who's 10, she's like, yeah, Dad, like, no kidding. Like, that's the way it's always been. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, we just always assume, but I know you. You're my daughter. I'm your dad, right? Whatever. I'm like, oh, crap. So now I know that exists. So when I go into a conversation and I know it's going to be heavy or whatnot, I'll say, hey, listen, this is this, but it's not what it means. Yeah. And I've also learned to ask that question. This is what I'm seeing. This is how I'm interpreting it. Is that accurate? And if we go from there, that works so well. And the other thing is it's a challenge. And if I may, can I talk about assumptions for just 2 seconds?
Yeah, always. Yeah. Go right for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Assumptions are a big part of what I talk about when I'm talking about how are we going to be leaders? How do you want to show up as a leader? And understanding that your assumptions are often based on your biases. That's the experience I've come across. We don't like something, so therefore this is the assumption we make about it. Yep. And the other thing is, as a leader, the experiences I've seen that I've been part of, I've witnessed as a leader and a follower, is in the lack of information, we will make assumptions. And 99% of the time, that hole we're filling, that assumption hole, is full of the worst case scenarios. It's our part of our natural instinct to fight or flight. If we prepare for the worst case scenario, then we're ready to go if we don't need it. But often we don't need it. So as the leader, what might we be doing? What information might we be able to offer and help people realize that thing? What assumptions can we get rid of? What biases can we work around? And know that outwardly and inwardly, that is going to happen. That's the other kick. We're going to make assumptions. We're going to have biases. There's no way around it. It's just knowing when it's happening and how it's affecting the decisions we're making, because it will every time.
Yeah.
So how do you do
I
it?
think the way we look, the way we act it's always going to go into this spiraling cascade of, if I walk into a room escalated in any emotion, that's the typical response that other people are going to give us. If we walk in and we're just got the scowl on our face and we're angry, we're short, people are going to immediately feel the energy in the room. And I think it's one of those things that people need to be more, it all goes back to leading yourself. Mm-hmm. Not to quote Dr. Mace too many times, but it's true.
For what it's worth, I agree with you. Pushing people around those days are over. It just
doesn't work.
It's just the way it is. Yeah.
It's very shallow, and it returns very small amounts of return.
And it's short lived. Like it does not last.
Very, very short. So I don't know.
It's tough. Yeah.
Any last parting words for us as we get ready to close this thing out?
Well, I'd just like to say, so the one thing about generational, but really quickly, is my experience has been, I did a bunch of research. That's a huge exaggeration. I read a couple of books about generational differences in leadership.
That's plenty.
Yeah. And the one thing that I really took away from both the books was the same, almost verbatim, was problems between generations for leaders is nothing new. Mm-hmm. My great-great-grandfather had thought that his grandson was a little snot-nosed punk and he couldn't understand his music. And then flash forward 50 years, my grandfather thought my dad's music was junk. And I think my dad's music is junk. Why? Because it's all different generations. It's not going away. These aren't new. But the one constant that has remained to make all of it work is having a conversation. Ask some questions. Sit down. Now, I am never going to understand the music today. I don't need to. But I can ask them what their day was like and go with that. Right? There are always connections there. There's always those things that will tie us together. You just got to find them. Sometimes it takes more work, but you can find them. And thank you so much for inviting me on this show. I have had such a great time. I love talking leadership. I love talking about the things. You can see that the more excited I get, the more animated I get, the faster I speak. I apologize for that. I just love it so much. I love the sphere of talking about leaders and how we can all help each other and get different perspectives on different ways to do it, because there's many ways to do all of these things. And thank you so much for giving me the platform to chat.
Oh, anytime. And we'll have all the appropriate links for Trench Leadership and the things that you do and all your projects and the things that you've been working on down in the comments and the show notes. And thank you so much taking the time to come out and join us on this call. I really appreciate having you on the podcast and giving your perspective on leadership, because it all matters. If podcasting was ask one person to get the right answer and it's over with, then podcasting would be dead a long time ago. But
for sure.
Everybody's got unique experiences, and I just love sharing stories. And our perspective is to ask the questions that we think our listeners want to hear, and that's what we're trying to do. And so thank you again, Simon, for coming on.
This has been a real pleasure. Thanks so much. Take care.
You too.